Hey there, in this week's video, we've got some crazy history about the strongest warrior race in Star Wars, that being the Mandalorians. There's a lot to talk about, and once again, we're going to be connecting the Clone Wars to some comics and then up to the current Mandoverse. Now, who were the Death Watch? Back in 42 BBY, which was 10 years before the events of the Phantom Menace, a civil war broke out on the planet of Mandalore. The fight was between the new Mandalorians, who were a pacifist section of society who decided to rise against the more warrior cultured traditionalists who were sticking to their ancestral ways of conducting society. Once the new Mandalorians had risen to become a voice in the governing bodies on Mandalore, some of the traditionalist Mandalorians reacted with violence. It would be their downfall in the end, because the average Mandalorian citizen ended up siding with the new Mandalorians in fear of more aggression. With their newfound strength in numbers, the new Mandalorians rose to victory against the unorganized tribes of the traditionalists. After the new Mandalorians' victory, they banished the surviving members of the warrior clans to the habitable moon of Concordia. Then Prime Minister Almec sided with the Duchess Satine Kryze and the new Mandalorians. It was there on the moon the warrior tribes of Mandalore skirmished until Vizsla was able to unite the warring tribes using an ancient weapon known as the Dark Saber. That's when the Death Watch was born. Vizsla was a descendant of the ancient Mandalorian Jedi Vizsla, who once united Mandalore 1,000 years before Vizsla's time. The Jedi Knight Vizsla was the original wielder and creator of the Dark Saber, a unique black-bladed lightsaber that the Order had locked in the Jedi Temple after his death. A few years after that, during the fall of the Old Republic, ancestors of Clan Vizsla liberated the lightsaber from the Jedi Temple, and then it was used as a symbolic weapon held by the ruler of Mandalore. After a while, the moon of Concordia became stable enough to remain a province of the homeworld Mandalore, with Vizsla acting as its governor. Voiced by Jon Favreau, Vizsla was an intimidating character, and he had to be one of my all-time favorite villains from the Clone Wars TV show. What else was crazy about Death Watch is in Season 4 of the Clone Wars, Bo-Katan Kryze was also introduced as a lieutenant to Vizsla, often acting as the right-hand man during his rule over the Death Watch. If you didn't already guess, Bo-Katan Kryze was the sister of the new Mandalorians leader, Duchess Satine Kryze. Bo-Katan disagreed with the pacifist ideals of her sister and thought it would leave their society severely weakened. Vizsla and his Death Watch Mandalorians would go on to ally with the separatist leader Count Dooku, where they conducted a plot to assassinate Satine Kryze in an attempt to overthrow the new Mandalorians. Luckily for Satine, she was very close friends with Obi-Wan Kenobi and was able to survive the attempt on her life. This scene here, where the Prince Talmeric died, is one of the funniest scenes in the whole show. He tried to assassinate the Duchess, and let's just say it didn't go so well for him.
If you shoot me, you prove yourself a hypocrite, and you, Kenobi, you'd be hailed as a hero by everyone on this ship. Almost everyone. Who will strike first and brand themselves a cold-blooded killer?
Obi-Wan went on pleading with Satine to let the Republic get involved, for Obi-Wan had evidence of separatist involvement with the Death Watch. However, Satine was stuck with her pacifist ideals, and Mandalore remained neutral in the war. After as many failures to take out the Duchess were thwarted by Obi-Wan Kenobi, Vizsla convened with Dooku about their next course of action, which was to regain their strength and wait for further instruction. Count Dooku would eventually betray Vizsla, and the two engaged in lightsaber combat. Somehow, Vizsla escaped with only a slightly gnarly lightsaber scar on his cheek. During the new Mandalorians' time of neutrality in the war, many trading partners and routes of the Mandalorian people were out of their reach. The black markets were then heavily used to subsidize the world's nutritional needs. However, it turned out this bottled tea drink being sold to children in schools of Mandalore were actually toxic and being smuggled onto the planet. The drinks made many children sick, and it was through black market investigating that Prime Minister Almec was revealed to be the culprit. The Duchess had Almec arrested and placed in a Mandalorian prison, leaving her as the sole leader of Mandalore. Moving on to the next chapter in our story, the Force indeed worked in mysterious ways, it turned out. Sometime after Darth Maul and Savage Opress escaped from Kenobi and a band of pirates, they were doomed to die in outer space space after being left adrift in their escape pod. Now, who else in this video but the Death Watch came to their rescue? Unaware of who the unconscious brothers even were, Vizsla took them to a medical facility for them to be treated. Plotting to reclaim Mandalore and kill Obi-Wan Kenobi, the Night Brothers and the Death Watch struck a deal to work together to reclaim the planet. This was actually the first time we saw Bo-Katan disagreeing with Vizsla, mainly because of the last time they allied with a Sith Lord. Dooku wound up betraying them. I still won't be trusting Bo-Katan in the upcoming Season 3 of The Mandalorian because she was still behind Death Watch during a lot of their terrorist attacks. She was also active in the occupation of the planet Karlak, even having been in a fight with young Ahsoka over an attack on a native village. This scene where they attack the Karlak villagers, who just wanted to be left alone by the way, is a stark contrast to the scene in which everyone's favorite Mandalorian, Din Djarin, was rescued by a group of Death Watch warriors during a separatist invasion of his village on the planet Akvatina. This particular section of the Death Watch would later be known as the Children of the Watch, which was the cult Din Djarin and the Armorer were both involved in. I just wanted to point it out because these things both happen around the same time period, now known as the fall of the Republic. In one of my favorite episodes of the Clone Wars ever, Maul convinced Vizsla that they needed to band with the underworld organizations to build an army to reclaim Mandalore. This began the reign of terror on the underworld, first visiting the Black Sun criminal syndicate. What's cool about these guys is that their base of operations was on Mustafar. Maul had given the ruling council of the Black Sun Syndicate the choice to join his new army. However, disgusted at the thought of becoming someone else's thugs, the leader of the ruling council ordered Maul and his entourage of Death Watch warriors to be executed. Maul gave Savage a nod, then ducked out of the way as his brother pulled out his giant double-bladed lightsaber. He threw the lightsaber across the table. This beheaded 5 members of the ruling council all at the same time. For an animated show, there certainly are a lot of beheadings during this. The last remaining member of the ruling council agreed to join Maul's new Shadow Collective, which was the name of his underworld alliance. Shortly after this, everybody's favorite spice drug dealers, the Pikes, decided to join Maul's Shadow Collective on their own accord to avoid incident. The final group of the Shadow Collective was the Great Hutt Empire, and they were a little more tricky to deal with than the other crime syndicates. The growing Shadow Collective flew right to Nal Hutta, the swampy homeworld of the Hutt species. Only 3 members of the ruling council were actually present. Jabba and another Hutt leader named Gorga were only in attendance via hologram. Maul demanded access to Hutt space and its vast resources in exchange for the lives of the ruling council of the Hutts. That's when Jabba dispatched his bounty hunters on Nal Hutta. The bounty hunters managed to push back Maul and the Death Watch to the landing platforms. That's when Bo-Katan and her troop of reinforcements flew in and changed the pace of battle. She clearly has some doubts still and isn't afraid to express them, which is surprising in such a ruthless organization. 2 of the Hutts plus some bounty hunters managed to escape, but with 1 council member left behind, Maul demanded he reveal the location of Jabba the Hutt. Crying in Huttese, the council member told Maul to go to Tatooine because Jabba's palace was obviously the next place to go. Maul ordered his brother to kill the Hutt. This time, Maul and the Death Watch wasted no time in going to Tatooine and sacking Jabba's palace from the sky. They made quick work of Jabba's ground forces and had no issues making their way straight to the throne room. Jabba, knowing he would die if he didn't, decided to submit the Hutt's resources to Maul under the new Shadow Collective. With the army completed, Vizsla and Maul conducted a plan to make the Death Watch Mandalorians appear like heroes of Mandalore. Basically, the idea was to use the Shadow Collective, including Savage Opress, to cause havoc across Mandalore, overwhelming the new Mandalorian security force. Then Vizsla and the Death Watch would secretly save the day by arresting the Shadow Collective members, the goal being to make the Duchess's government look unfit to protect Mandalore and overthrow them in the process. The plan was a smashing success, only problem was Vizsla had been plotting to betray Maul the whole time. Vizsla was named the new Prime Minister of Mandalore, and he had the Night Brothers put into the same prison where they also held the Duchess. While in prison, Maul made a plan to challenge Vizsla to one-on-one combat. By the ancient rules of Mandalore, if Maul were to defeat Vizsla in combat, his soldiers would be honored bound to follow him instead. Maul gave his brother the go-ahead to release them from prison. Savage easily wrecked their cell and killed multiple Mandalorian guards. Looking for someone to take over Vizsla's position as Prime Minister, they found the former Prime Minister Almec. Maul struck a deal with him to act as ruler of Mandalore once Maul removes Vizsla from power. On to one of the coolest fights in all of Star Wars. Your average Mandalorian would have died instantly in a fight against Maul. Vizsla, on the other hand, had put up one hell of a fight against the Sith Lord. He not only kept up with Maul in saber combat, but was able to disarm him for a moment. He also used his jetpack, blasters, flamethrower, grenades, and cables to survive, as long as he did in this wicked fight. However, once Maul was disarmed, he quickly switched to his hand-to-hand combat skills, breaking Vizsla's lightsaber arm in the process. In a brutal fashion, Maul beat the man while he was on the ground, even using his robotic legs to get in a couple kicks. Finally, using the Force, he summoned the Darksaber and beheaded the Death Watch leader in front of his men. Maul claimed his rule over the Death Watch and the planet. With his goal to remain in the shadows going to plan, he ordered Prime Minister Almec to act as the ruler for him. Almec told the people of Mandalore that Satine was the one who killed Vizsla and was why she would remain in prison. Bo-Katan was present during the beheading, and she immediately denounced Maul as the ruler of Mandalore, as she believed no outsider could rule over the planet. Several other Death Watch members joined her as they fled the scene before things got even uglier. Immediately after, Bo-Katan found the son of the Duchess, and together they managed to break Satine free from her incarceration. Unfortunately, it wasn't for long because she was recaptured by the Death Watch. Satine did, however, manage to send out a distress signal to the Jedi Order before she was put back into her cell. That's gonna be all for today, guys. This script went way longer than I expected it to, and this point right here felt like a good middle ground. Next week, that's when the next part's gonna be coming, so subscribe and make sure you stay tuned for that one.